Hey guys, welcome to Legal Essentials, where we enlighten you on matters arising from the perspective of the law. And today, we're going to be talking on the differences between fundamental human rights and human rights, because there are differences. People believe that fundamental human rights and human rights are the same thing, but they're actually not. They're quite different, very different. Well, not very, they're slightly different. You know, rights are moral or legal entitlement over something, and in the legal sense, they are reasonable claims that an individual has that is accepted by the society and that is approved by statutes. Rights are broadly divided into two. We have fundamental human rights and then we have human rights. What are the differences between the two, you may ask? Well, fundamental human rights are rights that are specific to Nigerians, while human rights are rights that are universal to every human being, irrespective of their caste, their race, their gender, their anything. Just as a human being, human rights are the rights that you deserve. Now, let me give you an example of how breach of rights works. Imagine this. A young man goes into a bet shop and decides to play games. He loses all the money he came with and decides to take out a loan from the bet shop to try and make up for the losses he already incurred. He loses that too, and he's stopped from leaving by the attendants in the bet shop. They lock him there overnight and they go back home. They come the next morning, the man is dead. Now, his right that was breached was that of freedom of movement. And if he was alive, the court that he would go to for redress, as we spoke of in the last episode, would be the state high court or the federal high court. However, in some cases, the breach of fundamental human rights is okay. It is allowed by the law. And these cases would include effecting an arrest, search warrants, or state of emergencies that are issued by the governor or the president, as seen in section 45 sub 3 of the 1999 Constitution as amended. Remember this: the elemental rights of the citizens of a country that is mentioned in the Constitution and is enforceable under the law is known as fundamental human rights, while human rights are rights that every single human being needs to survive with freedom and respect. Here are some of your fundamental human rights as seen in chapter 4 of the Constitution. Right to life, right to freedom from torture, right to freedom from slavery, right to freedom of movement, right to freedom of religion, right to freedom of speech and expression, and right to assembly and association. Also, as the fundamental human rights is found in the Constitution, so is the actual human rights found in the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. And they include equality in dignity and rights, right to life, liberty and security, freedom from slavery, freedom from arbitrary arrest, and right to freedom of speech. Let us talk differences between human rights and fundamental human rights so you can understand how they both work. Human rights are universal, they are inalienable. That means it applies to every person, every individual, irrespective of their citizenship, while fundamental human rights are specific to the citizens of a particular country. Second, human rights originate from international laws and treaties, while fundamental human rights come from the country's constitution. The third one is human rights are enforced through international mechanisms, while fundamental human rights are enforced through the country's courts. The next one is human rights focuses on a broader range of rights such as social and economic rights, while fundamental human rights specifically focuses on political and civil rights. Next, human rights apply globally, while fundamental human rights apply to the specific country the individual is from. Now, both fundamental human rights and human rights are enforceable in nature, but while fundamental human rights are enforced by the law courts, human rights are enforced by the United Nations organizations. Now, moving away from the differences, we also have the similarities between fundamental human rights, and some of them are as follows. First one, they both aim to protect individuals from abuse and ensure dignity. 2, they both are based on universal human rights principles. And 3, they both are enshrined in the country's constitution as well as international treaties. Now let's talk about the types of rights that we have. We have civil rights, we have social rights, we have economic rights, we have cultural rights, we have political rights, and so many more. Bringing it back home, here are some challenges to human rights and fundamental human rights in Nigeria. First one is corruption, obviously. Then we have insecurity like Boko Haram, banditry, we have poverty, we have police brutality and extrajudicial killings, freedom of speech and press restriction, human trafficking and modern slavery, child labor and child marriage, discrimination against women, LGBTQ plus individuals and persons with disabilities, and environmental degradation and rights of indigenous people, etc. Now, here are some ongoing efforts that are being made to eradicate the challenges I just mentioned. First one is strengthening of human rights institutions and mechanisms. The second one is promotion of human rights education and awareness. The third one is support for victims and affected communities. And we have advocacy for policy reform and implementation, among others. In conclusion, looking at the fundamental human rights of Nigerians as reflected in Chapter 4 of the Nigerian Constitution, could it be said to be comprehensive? Has it been fully implemented by previous government, and would you say it is being fully implemented by government today? Is there room for improvement, and in what ways? Could we take 18 or 2 from the United Nations? I'd like some answers as well. With this exposition, I hope you can now differentiate between fundamental human rights and human rights, even if it's just a little. If you have any questions, suggestions, additions to what I've said, leave them down in the comment section below. Do not forget to like, to subscribe, and to share to your friends that you believe should know the difference between human rights and fundamental human rights, or just their rights. My name is Grace, and I'll see you next time.